If you have some bad news, you have a cup of tea. At a funeral, you have a cup of tea. They bomb your homes, you have a cup of tea. We've got the kettle on, we haven't got enough water in it, we're going to make loads of tea.
So you tend to serve tea at most events?
Hiya, would you like a cup of tea? Yeah, I've served tea outside the Bank of England on more than one occasion. I've served tea to the Silver Command, which is the second in overall command on an action when the police are involved. I've served tea to politicians, outside factories. I've tried to serve tea to bailiffs as they're evicting. It's a free cup of tea, or if you want to make a donation, that's allowed too. Yes, but we don't have a... Because being an anti-capitalist, it would be a bit hypocritical, wouldn't it, to start selling people tea?
When I first started asking activists if I could film the kind of lead up to an action and the kind of way that they went about planning it and how it all kind of worked and the behind the scenes, as it were, I got absolute flat out no's from everybody. There wasn't anybody who was even, it was really difficult to get people to agree to it. And the primary reason was because essentially what I was asking was, can I come along and amass a whole body of material that could be used against you in court to prove a conspiracy theory for everybody who was in the room when you were talking about that and that sort of thing. So of course, it's kind of reasonable that people were quite resistant to the idea. And I spent a lot of time trying to work out how it could be done in a way that would keep people safe and wouldn't put them in any more jeopardy than they were kind of already putting themselves in. When we would be out on an action, I'd be filming the night before at the kind of planning stage, and I would have runners who would run tapes away from wherever we were to a safe house because it was possible we could be raided where we were, so we didn't want to have anything incriminating then.
This year, the camp is in London, and they're targeting the banks that finance climate change. Marina's in a group coming up from the south coast.
Today's Times, page 12 and 13, and an image of a petrol bomb exploding, which is ludicrous because we use biodiesel, not petrol.
In the process of getting them to agree, I'd gotten to know what their concerns were about participating. And aside from the legal concerns, they had some really valid concerns about the way they had been represented in the past and the way that they were frequently represented whenever they kind of engaged with what they referred to as the mainstream media. And I was damn determined that I wasn't going to kind of misrepresent them or sell them down the river like that. And when I started talking to broadcasters about the access that I had gotten, the amount of cynicism that I found about the subject matter was really quite surprising and slightly discouraging. And I felt like it was pretty unlikely that I would manage to get a broadcaster to support the film that I wanted to make about them.
Basically, the likely charges of both going inside and being outside is aggravated trespass, although going inside it will probably be slightly more. If this goes to court, you're likely to get a fine or community service. It shouldn't be anything too heavy, but it will be slightly more if you go inside. And criminal damage, we have avoided at every cost in the planning of this action, which has much more severe consequences. So I think we should preferably keep it that way.
You've got this kind of funny combination of people sort of doing this cloak and dagger thing, but they're all actually quite sort of like lovely, fluffy people who kind of wouldn't hurt a fly. And so, they don't have the like killer instinct that might go along with that often, which sort of leads to some really humorous situations where people are kind of trying to figure out what the right thing to do is. They do believe that you can have an effect on the world if you try hard enough, but at the same time they're kind of pessimistic because they're quite aware of just how steep that hill is to climb, particularly on the issue of climate change, which is what they're campaigning about in the film. We managed to raise about £18,000 through crowdfunding, which is immensely useful, and it also gave us nearly 500 people who had donated to the film who became really useful supporters of the film and have become a little kind of army of helpers that have helped us along the way. But ultimately financially it really came down to foundation grants. Crowdfunding's really exciting, but it's also quite limited and very time consuming.
I'd like you to turn off the camera. I just got the message from my chief. Okay, I showed you my press card.
Yes, but this is a crime scene.
A crime scene?
Yeah.
I'm a member of the press. I showed you my
But if you don't understand it...
I'm a journalist. I'm not turning off the camera.
I think in some ways part of what doing this film has done for me is it's made me get off the fence a little bit more and be more willing to say, actually, I think this is what we should do, and I think that we should do it, and you all should come and do it too, and I'm not afraid to say that to people, you know, whereas I think I used to kind of think, oh, you know, who am I to tell people what to do in this really relativist kind of, you know, late 90s sort of framework, and now I'm kind of going, no, actually, I think you're wrong, and I think you need to step up and, you know, help me and help these people to make the world a better place.